What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here in our podcast. What's going on in pop culture right now? Got a bunch of music to get to this week. Little Uzi Vert, Freddie Gibbs, Tomorrow Together, and BABYMONSTER, as well as Tinashe, who I saw live in concert. And then I have two early movie reviews to discuss. Two movies I saw at the Independent Film Festival of Boston, Nickel Boys and The Brutalist, two movies that'll be in the Oscar race, two movies that really won't be available to most people until January in the theater, so these are non-spoiler reviews. Of course, if you're super spoiler phobic, be sure to come back later, but make sure you come back. And make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, linktree.com/nostalgiapod, see links below. Get the best of 2024 Spotify playlist linked below. Let me know it's good. And what's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of Tinashe's Match My Freak tour. Saw Tinashe live in concert last night at MGM Music Hall in Boston. This was my first time seeing Tinashe perform, an artist I've been a fan of for over 10 years at this point. Of course, we know Tinashe blew up a long time ago at this point with Tuon, and of course had her biggest hit since Tuon earlier this year with Nasty. I've reviewed the last handful of Tinashe albums in general. I think she's one of the most interesting and underrated R&B artists we have right now. Of course, I was very interested to see her live. You know, she has a good voice. She also has a strong reputation as a dancer, so I was expecting a good show. And I have to say, Tinashe's Match My Freak tour was great. Obviously, I'm a fan of her music, so I'm going to hear a lot of songs I like, but what really stood out to me with this show is the performance element to it. Tinashe's up there with four background dancers, these four guys, and these guys were awesome. They were very in sync, tons of choreography, so much variety to the choreography, playing off Tinashe, doing stuff on their own. There were moments where they would have their own dance breaks as Tinashe went backstage for a brief moment. It was a great added element to the performance, and I thought they were just really fantastic. Additionally, the visual element with the very simple video wall, on the back of the stage, I think was really cool because the visuals really changed and switched up as the songs progressed and the show went along. So that was a nice addition. Also, one of the background dancers in a few moments had a handheld video camera of some kind that he would use to film Tinashe, live in the moment, and then we would see Tinashe's, the POV of the camera, see Tinashe's face in real time on the back of said video wall. They would turn that on the crowd at times. Another really cool added element, there was, I think, a really nice touch where they started with that when Tinashe was still backstage, so we only could see her on the video screen. Like, visually, I think the show is very well thought out as well. And it seemed like a tight crew, because they had the four background dancers. They actually moved the elevated stage on top of the normal stage. They moved that back and forth a few times. One of them's doing the filming, so busy group, but they were very much in it. And I thought it was just really great. And of course, Tinashe, unsurprisingly, really great live. I think one thing that stood out to me was she didn't really banter too much. She was really just kind of about her business. Whipped through about 25 songs or so in 70 minutes. Didn't really remark to the crowd too much, obviously normal shout outs and stuff, but nothing, no too long pauses or anything like that. There were a few moments where they're almost like interludes where you would hear a song such as All My Friends, the Snake Hips Tinashe song, when there's a transition between the show, and even though Tinashe wasn't doing outfit changes, it was a natural break point, I think, for the performers, given that it's labor-intensive show, right? You're singing, but also doing legit choreography and whatnot. I think vocally, I like Tinashe a lot live. I mean, the voice is good. We know this. There was a backtrack, unsurprisingly. Anyone who's doing a lot of dancing is going to have a backtrack, but the mix was really well done. And Tinashe, to her credit, was certainly singing, all those verses. It was really more about the choruses where the dance breaks would happen, and that's where you just kind of hear the backtrack. The show I saw was not sold out by any means, but everyone there was super into it. Honestly, they were bigger Tinashe fans than me in that room, and I actually did not even realize that she had so many queer fans. But there's a very diverse group of people in the room, and everyone was vibing hard. I think the third track or so that got played, Needs, got a big pop, and then right after that we went into Link Up of Songs for You, a song I wasn't expecting to hear. That song, I love that song. It's kind of like a rap banger. It was really good. Bouncin', I think, hit really nice. Throw a Fit got a big pop. Talk to Me Nice. And then towards the last third of the show, you had all in a row Party Favors. She shouted out the day ones on that, leading up to that song. Again, another song I didn't really expect to hear. Awesome. Party Favors into All Hands on Deck into 2-1. What a sequence. And then she ends with No Broke Boys off the new album Quantum Baby, and of course ending with the only song she could have ended with, Nasty. And it was just a really fun time. I mean, talk about spending your time on a Wednesday night. Like, there's really nothing better than like seeing like a really well done show amongst a crowd of people that all want to be there and like really know the music. I wasn't expecting to hear so many like EDM remixes of Tinashe songs, but the kind of like Match My Freak like motif starts off with this EDM remix of Nasty to start the show, and then right before Nasty gets played, they play a different DJ remix to kind of cue up the song. So a nice little touch again. Like, I think the momentum of the show was really consistent. But yeah, shout out to Tinashe. Again, I'll take the opportunity to say I think she's really underrated still. I've never quite understood why she didn't become a massive star, like some of her other peers did. I mean, she makes great music. She's a beautiful woman, obviously, great dancer. Like, it's the whole package, obviously. I never quite understood, why things didn't quite work out, but now she's really been quite established the last few years, last few albums, and leaving RCA Records, finding her creative, I think, zen in a more independent situation with her career, and it seems to be working great. And of course, Nasty, her biggest song to date, a song that's not just a TikTok hit. Like, that's a legitimately good song, and it was about time that she got like a break like that. But yeah, let me know, what did you think of Tinashe's Match My Freak tour? If you saw it, what do you think of Tinashe in general? Let me know. And for more music reviews and concert reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up, Welcome Back Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Tomorrow Together's second release of the year, the Star Chapter Sanctuary. Male K-pop groove, big hit and high, back once again, as they've been pretty consistently in the last, 5 years or so. Very prolific group. This is the first Star Chapter in their musical output. They've previously given us Dream, Name, and Chaos chapters. I'll be honest, I find a lot of that pretty hard to grasp and understand. Nonetheless, here we are, starting off the Star Chapter. Tomorrow Together are definitely one of the steadiest and most reliable K-pop groups going right now. However, because they release so much music, unsurprisingly, a lot of it can kind of fall by the wayside. While the Star Chapter Sanctuary is by no means bad, I do find a lot of this pretty forgettable, in the sense that it doesn't really rise up and really grab you in any kind of lasting way. 6 songs, 15 minutes, they're all pretty solid, but nothing is spectacular here. Track 1, Heaven, steady kick drum. I think like the vocals are a bit reined in on the chorus, a bit too much for me. It's a higher register singing, but it also sounds a bit washed out. Over the Moon, definitely a better beat and a better chorus. Definitely more punch vocally as well. You get some guitar. I think this is one of the highlights. Track 3, Danger, is solid. The tempo is there once again. It has a repetitive hook, but I actually think it works pretty well alongside the drums. It's over. Resist, Not Gonna Run Away. I think the verses are very solid here, but the chorus is just okay. Sounded like we got some bongo drums, at least a little bit, interestingly. 41 Winks, this is definitely the best and catchiest hook on the whole EP. Drum's pretty good. You get a little cymbal this time around. And then the last song, Higher Than Heaven, definitely has the most pronounced guitars of the whole release. That being said, I don't think anything on here is as catchy as, say, I'll See You There Tomorrow from their release earlier this past spring. And this is largely how I feel about a lot of K-pop groups that release like a lot of EPs like all the time, where these are not fully formed like artistic works. How could they possibly be? They come about so quickly and they're so brief. Usually, on the good side of things, like with I'll See You There Tomorrow, there's like one really standout track, or standout music video that you can latch on to and bring into like your rotation if you're a fan of the group. But overall, I think this is pretty lackluster from TXT, which is a group that I've definitely enjoyed their past work a lot more. It was only a year ago when we got the Name Chapter Freefall, which was a more full-length record, so not sure how long we'll have to wait again for one of those, but I think more than anything we know TXT will be with us again quite quickly, as we know. But yeah, let me know, what'd you think of Tomorrow Together's latest EP, The Star Chapter Sanctuary? Did you like it more than me? Let me know. And for more music reviews, more K-pop reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up, Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of BABYMONSTER's first album, Drip. BABYMONSTER, hot off their first EP from earlier this past April, having debuted just about a year ago with that first single, Batter Up. It's been a whirlwind year for this 7-member rookie K-pop group. BABYMONSTER has been very successful. You can look at the YouTube views, you can look at the attention that they've been commanding as the new YG girl group. Despite all that, there's been criticism of the quality of their music to this point, and I have certainly been in that camp. I've been pretty critical of a lot of the music that they've put out thus far, which of course is not that much music just yet. And that's despite the fact that I do think there's some tantalizing qualities to this group and some intriguing elements that perhaps with better songs, this group could really shine at their full potential. BABYMONSTER's first album, Drip, is another step in the right direction for this young group, but still leaves you wanting more. It's abundantly clear that this group is very capable, especially vocally, but YG continues to sell them short with the songs they are given, namely the writing. On this new album, Drip, you have Click Clack, which is one of the worst K-pop rap songs I've ever heard, and it's because the writing is bad. These are struggle bars, bar none. And it's disappointing because on other songs on Drip, I hear Ruka, I hear Ayan, I hear Asa rap, and I like what they can do. They are capable, they are good at it. We need the songs to be on par. The title track, Drip, has some strong early rapping, some really fun dancey vibes. I think it's a strong chorus until, again, the writing fails the song where they say drip 10 times in a row. This is a group that continues to stumble over their own feet, and again, we lay that blame at the hands of their producers and writers. But as I said, I continue to be intrigued by BABYMONSTER, and I think that speaks to the conception of the group. The members are pretty strong. I think apart from Rora, who really still has very little to do on most of the BABYMONSTER music, everyone else acquits themselves pretty well and makes a strong impression. I think if we look back to the first single from this album, Forever, which came out a few months ago now, that's a song that on its surface is this big mismatch of rap and, kind of sung dancey music, and yet it seems to really work. I think that's kind of some of the great success you can find in K-pop in being weird and being a lot of things at once. Forever is also a great example of what Ayan can do vocally, where she is one of the strongest singers throughout the K-pop industry. The voice is so striking and so effortless. You can tell she just has amazing pipes, and she can give you these flourishes, these layers on to parts of songs, the ends of verses, backing up someone else singing, and it just really elevates the moment because it's just such a strong, piece of singing whenever you get it. So we just kind of jumping through all the songs here again. We'll back it up to first song, Click Clack. On its surface, I like Chiquita's vibe as she starts the song, and I think the first set of bars actually are pretty catchy. Click clack, heels tap, walking with my hips back. That's good. The problem with that song is the next set of bars. Spending money, charge. Who be living large, walking like a boss. We make them talk. Are we kidding? Who thinks that's good? It's kind of unbelievable. Just actually finish the song, actually finish writing the bars, because you have these young women who could handle it. They can handle the rapping, but you have to give them the right words. It's just kind of unbelievable, how disappointing all of that is. Because on its surface, I was like, oh, that should be right in my alley. BABYMONSTER, all 7 of them rapping, sounds fun. I love rap. That's my favorite aspect of K-pop. By all means, let's do it. And they just completely dropped the ball with that song. It is an interesting example of the classic, YG outro actually working, where the tempo kind of picks up, and yes, it's predictable, but it's a pretty fun switch up to end the song, especially given how bad most of the rapping had been. And to that point, I think Farida actually was better than expected, with the flow, but I thought Rami's flow was pretty stiff, honestly, which is a bit disappointing because obviously she's a great singer, she's one of the strongest vocalists in the group, but did not care for her rapping. Also, Asa, very capable rapper, but I think she has a bit of Eminem syndrome, where she feels so compelled to cram as many syllables as possible into all of her bars and verses, and it gets pretty tiresome. Drip is interesting to me because right after the early rapping from Chiquita and Ion. You have Ruka giving you like these like almost like dancey vibes, kind of a different side to her. We've kind of associated her with like brief bits of rapping, on like Sheesh and like that and Batter Up and whatnot. And she's good at that. I think she has great presence. She has great swag. But this is almost like a different side of her. I think it works well on Drip, and it didn't really work on Click Clack, where you're like basically giving her autotune for seemingly no reason. I think the outro is a lot less successful on Drip, though, and Drip, should be said, has a co-writing credit from G-Dragon, who in and of himself has dropped a comeback today, his first song in close to 10 years, 7 years or whatever. Track 3, Love Maybe, actually surprised me. I thought the vocals were pretty great across the board. This is a very simple acoustic song, just kind of showcasing the vocal talent, and I thought it was pretty good, except for some of the fluttering at the end I didn't really care for, but I think overall the song's pretty successful. Track 4, Really Like You. Yeah, I like the drums, I like the horns. Ruka and Asa are rapping, and it's good, but like I really dislike when they do this like onomatopoeia rapping. It just feels and sounds so beneath them, and we get a ton of that on their duo song, Woke Up in Tokyo. Of course, they're both Japanese. In theory, a Ruka Asa rap song from the two like full-time rappers in the group should be cool, but man, the bars are just such a letdown. I mean, I think Really Like You, just to finish that thought, I think overall that song is fine. The chorus is a bit plain for my taking, but the song is fine. Ayan, again, kind of hard carry vocally. She's just so vocally rich, and the vocal flair really stands out. That I did like the outro bars though from Ayan, Asa, and Ruka. I think overall okay song. Woke Up in Tokyo though, oh my god, like underwritten chorus aside, like what is this? Like what is this song from hip hop rapping? Like I was just critical of Click Clack. I would take Click Clack over Woke Up in Tokyo, which I think is a big miss. I mean, verse 2 the bars are a bit better, but I mean the Asa Ruka hyped up rap song really let me down, to say the least. Billionaire, this song's a bit bouncier. You have like the guitar, almost like an island vibe, more of like a staccato rhythm, you could say. I think Ruka's bars are pretty fun. Classic YG outro, solid song. Love in My Heart, a house banger. It's fun, it's catchy. I think this is one of the best hooks on the album. Overall, hooks have been a struggle with a lot of the music from BABYMONSTER thus far. That's one of their best. And then lastly, we have the Batter Up remix. Of course, Batter Up, their debut single. The Japanese version came out earlier this year. Now we're getting a remix, and it's an EDM remix. And I actually think it's really good and very reminiscent of when, of course, YG made the Do 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 remix with Blackpink, which was like super, like, like big house. And that's not quite exactly what this is, but I think it's really enjoyable. Kind of just the increased tempo. I believe they've been playing this version of it live at least a little bit. The increased tempo on this version of Batter Up, I think, makes a song a lot more fun, and kind of helps smooth over some of the faults of that song in terms of it feeling like such a obvious approximation of past YG styles. Like the song's a bit more enjoyable, I think, in this current version. So yeah, like BABYMONSTER, like that is one of my favorite K-pop songs of the year. To be very clear, I think they're definitely good enough to really stand out when the songs are up to snuff, and like the Monsters intro on the EP earlier this year. I think the singing is excellent on that. I love that song. And Sheesh, despite its derivative nature, does have a catchy aspect to it. It makes sense why the song's been so popular. I want to like this group more than I currently do, and yet I'm still very invested in paying attention to their journey. Again, they're all very young women. I think there's a bright future ahead, and we know YG is very invested. It's just a matter of us getting there and being honest about the music we get to this point. I just think that the best is still yet to come. But let me know, what did you think of BABYMONSTER's first album, Drip? Do you agree it's a step in the right direction but still has some faults? Let me know what you thought. And for more music reviews, more K-pop reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of Freddie Gibbs' sixth album, You Only Die Once. This is his sixth, solo album, more if you count his collab work such as Alfredo with The Alchemist. Nonetheless, Gangsta Gibbs, Freddie Kane, he is back, first time since Soul sold separately 2 years ago, which notably was Freddie's major label debut after a long road, a long come up to the precipice of rap's mainstream. Therefore, to me, it's quite noticeable that this Halloween drop from Freddie is not on Warner like the last album. This is Freddie once again retreating more towards rap underground. Curious how quickly this has happened. Overall, Freddie Gibbs' sixth album, You Only Die Once, is a solid, consistent effort. I don't think this will change anyone's opinion on Freddie Gibbs. Like, it's another pretty good to great rap album from Freddie, something he's been doing for over 10 years at this point. 13 songs, 37 minutes. It's short and sweet, but almost all the songs pack a nice punch from Freddie. I think the best standout moment on this album is the final track on the set, where Freddie pays homage to lost rappers, both recently and of the past. I'm using bars like I want to smoke my ops like Oppenheimer on Wolverine. I appreciate the Jalen Brunson shout out on Rabbit Island. Freddie also calling out J. Cole in a certain sense, saying he would never delete. Track 1 Status, I really appreciated the gloomy keys, as Freddie is almost like giving a manifesto about where he stands. But yeah, I guess like I'm left with the sense that this is an album that is very much almost like status quo for Freddie, or perhaps more like a return to previous form if you were a bit more down on the last album, the major label debut. Cosmo Freestyle, track 2, I love the kick drums matched with the keys on that one. I think Brick Fees is a clear highlight on the album, very much an immaculate beat, the bass twinkling with the keys, Freddie talking about his come up to this point, kind of a classic Gibbs song. It's Your Anniversary, I thought the flow was great. Walk It Off, probably my favorite flow on the whole album. I think Freddie's absolutely fire on that song, and he's also giving you a bit of a melodic performance, which is really the only time he really does it on this album. I think that song really works. Ruthless stands out because it's a bit more acoustic with a noticeable hand clap production-wise. Are any of these my favorite Gibbs songs? No, I don't think so, but I think that's okay. Freddie's pretty consistent, pretty established at this point, so if you're a fan, you'll just bring some of these songs into rotation and keep it moving. Let me know, what did you think of Freddie Gibbs' latest album, You Only Die Once? What was your favorite song? And for more music reviews, more rap reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of Lil Uzi Vert's fourth album, Eternal Take. Of course, this is the follow-up to Uzi's blockbuster album, Eternal Take, which dropped in 2020, right as the pandemic was beginning. Long time ago at this point, but to me is my favorite Lil Uzi Vert project, just littered with bangers, and had a deluxe version of it, Lil Uzi Vert vs. the World 2, that added even more bangers to it. To me, that was the critical apex of Lil Uzi Vert's music. Of course, since that time, it took us a long while to get any noticeable and noteworthy Lil Uzi Vert music, but he did return after some time away with Pink Tape last year, which noticeably was Uzi getting a bit more experimental, some kind of rock dalliances, some punk dalliances, stuff that he's flirted with but never really dove into musically. And I think that tape, that given a lot of the hype and the anticipation for it, didn't land nearly as successfully as Uzi probably would have liked. Nonetheless, I'll always be excited about him giving us a full-length project like Eternal Take 2, just because to me he's one of the most important rappers of the last 10 years, which is funny to think about because he's been in our lives about 9 years. All My Chains came out back in 2015. It's crazy to think. Of course, following Pink Tape and even the stuff that came out, in the lead up to that post Eternal Take 1, Uzi's become a lot more enigmatic. I think he's a bit harder to pin down. The musical quality also has been a bit more dubious, and Just Wanna Rock's hit status aside, definitely his creative peaked in 2020, and before that, of course, with the, major come-up stuff since 2016. So, Uzi's definitely not at his hottest, not at the strongest critical standing. I think that much is quite obvious. Lil Uzi Vert's fourth album, Eternal Take 2, has some great moments, but doesn't really stand up to the enduring legacy of its blockbuster predecessor. There are definitely moments reminiscent of past Uzi glory on this album, but there's also just a lot of forgettable material, and I think Uzi's rapping, his vocals, his rhymes are not as consistent as they once were. It's hard to be super confident in Uzi's ability to be an album artist at this stage. I think we have to take a step back and lock more in on moments. And to that point, I think Perky Sex off Eternal Take 2 is one of the best Uzi songs of the last 5 years. I mean, that is an absolute banger with an incredible beat and really fun wordplay and whatnot. Other than that, though, there's some moments, but Eternal Take Two just doesn't feel nearly as fresh or as essential as past Uzi projects used to, and that's a bit of a shame. It's kind of going through the track list here. Number one track one, We Good. Bass is hitting nice. Uzi seemingly rapping about like a new contract. I'm not sure. Does he have like something new with Atlantic that we didn't know about? I'm not sure. I like the drop on Lightyear. I think Meteor Man is probably the first song of any real consequence, though, track three, where you have Uzi seemingly doing a version of like Cardi voice, of like rage music, etc. I don't think it comes together at all. The song's pretty meh. Pars in the Mars, this one, I don't know, like you have Uzi rapping about being too high, but there's just like placeholder bars. Like that's something Kanye would do at this point. Like it just doesn't feel like a finished song. The Rush featuring Big Time Rush is hilarious for that being the only feature. I don't think the song really amounts to much of anything at all. Also, apparently, only 3 of the 4 Big Time Rush members are on the song, and the other one, it clearly did not want to be on the song, and it's a minor controversy for people who care about Big Time Rush. Kind of funny. Not an Option, I think, would be a really solid song, but the beat is just so monotonous and lackluster that it's a letdown ultimately. Mr. Chow, I think, is probably the best pure vocal performance from Uzi. His best rapping, his fun beat with these like triumphant horns. I think that's definitely a highlight for sure. Lift Them Up, beat's solid. Chips and Dip, a bit crazy of a beat with these like distorted horns. At least it stood out. Black Hole, I think, is probably the best use of auto-tune on the whole album. Chill Bay is interesting. I think this song, it works, but it stands out because it's almost like softer spoken Uzi going a lot more melodic while still being up tempo. It's kind of unique. But yeah, I think it's an album that ultimately ends much stronger than it begins. But if you're an Uzi fan, I mean, I have a hard time thinking you're gonna listen to too much of this music over the highs of the past, And it's not like Uzi's doing anything new with this to make you at least intrigued by it. Like I think Pink Tape, to its credit, was Uzi doing a lot of stuff for the first time with the rock and punk stuff and whatnot, and like the baby metal and all that. Like Eternal Take Two, this is just a lesser version of past Uzi music, so there's really just not a whole lot to really recommend about it, apart from a few highlights like Perky Sex. But yeah, let me know, what did you think of Little Uzi Vert's latest record? What was your favorite song? And for more music reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Nickel Boys, the feature film debut from documentarian Ramel Ross. This is, of course, adapting the Colson Whitehead novel, The Nickel Boys, from 2019. Whitehead won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction for The Nickel Boys, becoming one of only 4 writers to win that award twice. And of course, the first time he won that award was for The Underground Railroad, which recently was adapted by Barry Jenkins into a incredible series on Amazon Prime Video, one of the most memorable and affecting TV shows of the last 5 years, without question. So as someone who hasn't read any of Whitehead's work but really loved The Underground Railroad, I was coming into Nickel Boys the film with some expectation of quality, of form choices, and just general, of course, strong message and a unique take. Nickel Boys is successful because it's tackling incredibly prescient and difficult subject matter. In this case, the experience of young black boys at a reform school during Jim Crow era Florida, the 1960s. Nickel Boys has an incredibly precise way it presents perspective and teaches us about its 2 central characters. This film is shot entirely in first-person perspective, but it never comes across as a gimmick because I think it's done in a really beautiful and eloquent way. And the introduction of our second POV character, thus letting us see the first POV character for the first time, really makes the movie blossom. It noticeably shies away from some of the physical violence. The film also uses archival footage of the time, Dr. King, the space race, etc., to really tactfully explain and expound upon the different experiences being felt during that time. We also see a good amount of Sidney Poitier in The Defiant Ones as a kind of continuing motif and reference point. For me, the spectacular filmmaking and the uniqueness of a lot of the structure of this movie is what really stands out. It's also impressive but challenging storytelling because it doesn't really hold your hand on conclusions and takeaways, and it really at almost every turn avoids obvious plotting and more overtly emotional choices. I think on one hand, I would have loved Nickel Boys even more. And like to be clear, like I really liked the movie, but I don't think it's the best movie I saw this year. But I can't help but be incredibly appreciative of everything this movie does and its uniqueness and all its successes. I probably would have liked the movie even more if I think there was just a bit more of plot to grasp on it. It's pretty plot thin, and like you're really sinking into the characters, I think, and you have to really be on for that ride and like be on for this kind of the beauty and the despair, I guess you could say. It's maybe it's a bit hard to explain, but I think, again, contrasting it with the Underground Railroad, which has a ton of plot and obviously has fantastical elements to it and very overt and consistent violence and whatnot, right? That's not what this movie is about. Perhaps maybe if the passage of time was a bit easier to grasp, I'm not sure, but I mean, to be clear, there are some standout sequences. Not going to spoil this movie because this movie, I was lucky enough to see it early. This movie is not getting a release until really January for most places. It's not even opening in New York and LA until the end of December, so it's going to be a bit of a while before we get this from Amazon MGM Studios. But there's a really standout sequence in terms of like what you feel emotionally once you like process things. There's a choice made at the very end I won't say anything about, but that like really colors in everything you've seen to that point. Before that, there's some stuff with a boxing match that really stands out. Fred Hetchinger's character as someone who's working at the school, of course, a white guy. Small role, but makes an impact, especially at the end. Hamish Linklater's performance as the really vindictive, malevolent headmaster of the Nickel Academy, this reform school, which is overtly treating its white attendees and its black attendees very differently. And while this film, kind of eschews giving you like, title cards at the end to tell you about the real life inspirations, if you dig into what this story is based on, specifically the Dozier School for Boys in Florida, it's pretty harrowing stuff. And, it's what happens in the movie is very much accurate to what's happened in real life. And this is namely rampant abuse and corporal punishment of black boys, and including murder and death. Like this school in reality, there are hundreds of unmarked graves that have been uncovered in recent times, in the last 10 years or so. And this is where we're spending this story when this quote unquote school was in its heyday. And I think it's a movie where you spend a lot of time like on the edge of your seat because you're waiting for something like really, really bad to like beat you over the head, and never quite does that in such an overt fashion. But when bad things do happen, they almost like wash over you in a maybe even a more effective way. It's hard to say. Anjanou Ellis-Taylor has a very memorable role as the first lead POV, Elwood's grandmother. But I got to really hand it to the two leads, Ethan Hersey and Brandon Wilson, who are, unknowns and no experience with them. They play Elwood and Turner. And, I think the performance, about Elwood, of this more reserved, bookish kid who starts to get beaten down by his new experience, but then has a defiance of trying to build himself and get himself out any way he can, contrasting that with Turner, who has been at the Nickel Academy for a long time and is incredibly cynical about the world in general, and so much so that he sees his time in this abusive school that he can't escape as no different than living in Jim Crow America. I also want to shout out Jimmy Fails, who has a very small role in the beginning of the movie as Elwood's high school teacher. Jimmy Fails, of course, was in The Last Black Man in San Francisco in a very memorable role. Hasn't worked too much since then, but always happy to see him. And Daveed Diggs has a interesting and important presence in Nickel Boys because he plays the adult Elwood. And once we learn about the adult Elwood, there's certain things you assume about the story taking place in the 60s, but the movie still manages to subvert and challenge those expectations by the end. So, really successful movie, uniquely filmed, and I think conceptually very effective. And I think for me, it's a movie that I have a lot of appreciation for. It's a difficult movie to watch at times, goes without saying. And I think because it's not quite as pulpy as some other, traumatic films are, maybe that's why it can be hard to grasp in certain aspects. But I think it's really excellent, and I think obviously Colson Whitehead material at this point. It's pretty darn certified. So I would love everything he's ever written to get adapted at this point because we have a good track record thus far. But yeah, Nickel Boys, they originally were going to release this movie at the end of October, and then I think they wisely pushed it back into a protracted, limited rollout, as this is expected to be a major awards contender. I think a Best Picture nomination is very likely, and not expecting pure contention per se, but I think adapted screenplay and picture are certainly there. I mean, frankly, I would go for cinematography with this movie, given how specific the cinematography is, but also how effective and gorgeous it is. So there's a lot to recommend about it, and of course, eventually, this will get to people on Amazon Prime Video. But I think you're gonna have to wait till the spring of next year for that. So keep an eye out for when the release eventually happens. And if you have seen the movie, please let me know what you thought. I think it's definitely a movie that is worth like critical discussion and perspective on, just because again it's so intentional and so unique that there's just a lot to expound upon, and share different takes on, different takeaways from. But yeah, let me know, what did you think of Nickel Boys? What was the aspect of the movie you most appreciated? What was most effective to you? Let me know. And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up, Welcome Back Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of The Brutalist, the new epic historical drama film from Brady Corbett, co-written by Corbett and Mana. Fast forward, this film is being released in the US by A24 in a few months' time. It's going to begin a very slow, limited rollout at the end of December. Really will probably be in front of most people in January sometime. So I was lucky enough to see this film early at the Independent Film Festival of Boston earlier this week, where I got to see the film in all its intended glory in 70mm at the Somerville Theater, a venue that projects and shows film year-round. And of course, 70mm as a film format has become a bit more talked about and mainstream lately due to efforts from big directors like Christopher Nolan and Denis Villeneuve. But Brady Corbett made The Brutalist independently. A24 did not get involved till after this film debuted at Venice earlier this year. And Corbett, to his credit, really struck out in a way to use a traditional film format in an independent filmmaking way. He took that to the next level by shooting The Brutalist in VistaVision, of course, a film format from, the 1950s when The Brutalist, the film, is taking place. As a result, The Brutalist becomes the first American movie since Marlon Brando's One-Eyed Jacks in 1961 to be shot entirely in VistaVision, just a big flex. And of course, this film is 215 minutes, aka 3.5 hours long, so this is reportedly 300 pounds of film stock, 26 film reels. It's a big undertaking. And what was cool about the experience of this movie too is it has a baked-in 15-minute intermission, baked in the sense that it's part of the film reel. Like, the movie doesn't get paused or anything. The movie keeps playing, and then a timed 15-minute intermission kicks off, and the movie picks back up from there, kicking off its second act structure, before and after, so to speak. Of course, there's been a lot of hype and anticipation and buzz about The Brutalist ever since that Venice premiere. Of course, Brady Corbett, this is his third film. I had seen his last film, Vox Lux, in 2018, a divisive film, a film I enjoyed when I saw it. I haven't revisited it. But The Brutalist, talked about an epic scale compared to films like There Will Be Blood, high praise for sure. And, A24 getting involved. It's, by all accounts, going to be a major player in the Oscar race and in the mix for Best Picture. So after all that hype and anticipation and the fanfare about how the movie was actually made, I'm happy to say that A24 and Brady Corbett's The Brutalist is a epic masterpiece. The scale of this movie is so grand, and it's made in such an impressive way that it's really hard not to just be incredibly impressed with the whole undertaking. Famously shot on VistaVision, there are shots in landscape and, cinematography choices that really pop and incredibly gorgeous, in that 70mm grain. And the film truly is epic. You have Adrian Brody's Laszlo Toth character, this Hungarian Jewish Holocaust survivor who emigrates to the United States and tries to pick his life back up together as a formerly very successful and renowned architect. And Toth's struggle to, keep his life together and then achieve a grand vision once he is brought onto this massive, once-in-a-lifetime mission really propels the movie. I think Brody's performance is excellent. The wealthy industrialist who hires him is played by Guy Pearce. Incredibly charismatic performance. I think if there's a fault to The Brutalist, it's largely in its second half, where Felicity Jones, I think, struggles with the material, playing a thin character, namely Toth's wife, who eventually follows him to America. But overall, I just couldn't help but be incredibly impressed by what the film accomplishes, what the film puts on screen, and just the, again, grand scale of like the journey of the storytelling. I think Brody's performance is very good, very nervy. It's kind of invoking what he did with The Pianist, of course, an Oscar-winning role. He's certainly contending once again for Best Actor. And he lays on the Eastern European accent quite thick. It's a big aspect of his character and what his character is able to achieve and whatnot in the film. And I think at times it almost makes certain dialogue moments hard to understand what he's saying because you can't rewind or anything, right? Like watching it live in the moment, on film. So I thought it was pretty effective in terms of the immigrant experience being communicated. I mentioned Guy Pearce. He plays Harrison Lee Van Buren, this wealthy industrialist who hires Brody to make this grand, epic, city on a hill vision. A chapel, a church, a gymnasium, a library, a civic center, all in one. And Brody's Toth's grand artistic designs are gonna be put it forward. And I think that the scale of that project, and once you see it start to begin, there's this epic scene where you watch them climb up a hill of where it's gonna be built. Looks gorgeous. And once things start cooking, and then of course inevitably once things start to go wrong, all of that snowballs and blossoms in a beautiful way depending on where you are with the storytelling. And I think the Pierce character, it's a great approximation of how immigrants can be preyed upon by people with more means and whatnot. A big part of this, as well as Van Buren's son, Harry Lee Van Buren, played by Joel Alwyn, who I think is really great in the movie as this kind of pompous and entitled, wealthy, son of a rich guy. Is there maybe some obviousness to the takeaway and the conclusion of some storylines in the second half, which I won't spoil, namely a confrontation between Toth and the older Van Buren? Yeah, you could say that. The conclusion's pretty overt and really clear and maybe not that deep. But to me, I think the overall conclusion, there's this great search at night through the institute, the big project that eventually gets made in certain aspects. I think it largely wraps up okay, even if there are some moments that I think maybe don't land with quite as much emphasis. Again, a lot of that unfortunately is laid at the feet of Felicity Jones's thin character, Toth's wife. There's an epic shot early on in the film when Toth gets up from steerage on his boat where he's crossing the Atlantic, and he looks up and he spies the Statue of Liberty as they're coming into Ellis Island, and you see it upside down. It's this absolutely gorgeous shot, gorgeous filmmaking, and perhaps a sign of things to come in the story. There's also a really beautiful train crash scene that you watch from a top down, almost in slow motion, view from the sky. I think really effective. In general, I think the score really sweeps and builds and blossoms that time. And yeah, I mean, I think maybe it's repetitive and redundant, but epic scale is really the name of the game with The Brutalist. And you don't see movies like this at all. And the fact that Brady Corbett was able to film this on the format he wanted, keeping the budget in check. Apparently using VistaVision was 1% of the budget, whether that's true or not. Clearly they were very intentional and tactical in how they made this movie. And it just really shows the movie to me looks way more expensive than its reported low budget. It's an incredibly impressive feat all around. And I think even if maybe it doesn't completely come together for some people, I think there's just so much incredibly impeccable craft with what's going on. And of course the writing is strong and the acting is universally strong for the most part, that for me it's really hard not to celebrate the movie. And I think at this point it's my favorite movie of the year. Of course there's a handful of movies still I have yet to see, so we'll see if that holds, but right now The Brutalist for me is in pole position as the best thing I've seen this year. It's a movie I really can't wait to talk about with more people. Again, it's only just beginning to slowly get in front of people in the lead up to its slow release, so we're a ways out from The Brutalist conversations in earnest. But yeah, let me know, what did you think of The Brutalist? What was your favorite aspect about it? A lot to chew on with the film. What do you think of its Oscar chances? And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Alright, next week we have a ton of music to discuss. XG, ASAP Ferg, Absol, Maxo Cream, NCT Dream, and then Red One. I'm going to see that movie early. And also The Penguin wraps up on HBO. So make sure you subscribe. YouTube.com/nostalgiapod, linktree.com/nostalgiapod. See links below. Get the best of 2024 Spotify playlist link below. Let me know it's good, and I'll see you next week.